Back during the dark ages of the 1990s, young Chris Miller stumbled upon an artifact that would become a lifelong obsession. Now, armed with a mind full of nostalgia and a basement full of comic books, Chris attempts to analyze the art and the artist that made him comics crazy.
Why this fool got more comics than a motherfucker?
Hey everyone, this is Chris Crazy House, and I'd like to welcome you all again to a brand new episode of Chris Crazy House Presents Comics Crazy. And today we're going to be getting into some Marvel Comics Presents Wolverine. I'm going to be doing a story arc called Blood Hungry. In this story, we are going to see our favorite feral mutant in a solo adventure where he goes to one of his favorite hangout spots, and that's Madripoor, and he gets caught up in a rivalry between two drug lords while also confronting a very dangerous adversary from his past by the name of Cyber, the villain with the adamantium epidermis. Been looking forward to getting into this one, and let me explain to you how we're going to do this flip through, because this is interesting in the way that this is put together, and I am going to have to review it in sections because this is featured in 8 issues, but the 8 issues where this story takes place are very short. If you know anything about Marvel Comics Presents, you know that there are comics that feature 4 different stories in each book. So the Wolverine story is usually the head story. That's the main story that takes place, but it's only 8 pages in every issue. So I have decided that I'm going to break this review up into 3 parts. So in this particular episode, we're going to review the first 3 chapters of Blood Hungry in Marvel Comics Presents. And likewise, once we get to the next chapters, I'll also do the next 3, where we'll review the next 3 in the second section and then the last 2 in the final section. So that way, I just found that was a better way to break down these reviews, so that way it's not too long for anyone watching us do these breakdowns on social media. So let's get into this. Let's start off by talking about the creative team for Blood Hungry. The creative team for Blood Hungry, starting off with the writer, is the late, great Peter David. So with the sad news of Peter David passing away, I thought that this would be the best comic to come back with and review some of the writing that he put down for Wolverine. Most of the Peter David stories that I've done on Comics Crazy have either been Incredible Hulk stories or Spectacular Spider-Man stories, but this will be the first one that we've done where he has written Wolverine. And once again, if you saw my tribute, you know how much I enjoy the writing of Peter David and how sad I am to see him go. But also, it's a shame that he was such a prolific writer and he was not very well treated by the industry. But we're going to see if we can pay our proper respects by reviewing this particular story arc. Now, the artist that we are going to be looking at for this book is Sam Kieth, and this is the first time we've had some artwork done by Sam Kieth on this particular channel. And this is one I've been looking forward to for a long time. Sam Kieth is an artist that I quickly took notice of when I was very young and noticed just how different his style was and how almost quirky it came off. But it is something to behold and something that I feel you guys will all enjoy. If the name Sam Kieth sounds familiar, you will know him as the creator of The Max, which was a comic book series in the early 90s and later became an animated series on MTV. So we're going to be looking at some of Sam Kieth's art early on when he was working with Marvel. And if you want my humble opinion, I think Sam Kieth was and is one of the best artists as far as drawing women in comics. He had a very different style by drawing women to be looking a lot more realistic, a little bit more curvy. They weren't the typical statuesque models that we see in comic books. He kept it real, and in my opinion, he made them a lot cuter and a lot sexier. So now that we got all that great info out of the way, let's get started with our flip through and review of Marvel Comics Presents Wolverine Blood Hungry, Part 1. Alright folks, we're going to be doing the very first part of Blood Hungry, and I'm going to show you the books that we're going to be looking through. First, I have a collected version of Wolverine Blood Hungry, so it collects the entire story from Marvel Comics Presents Wolverine and the whole story arc done by Peter David and Sam Kieth. And I think I got this at like a Barnes & Noble's, like, I don't know, like I was older and married by the time I got this, and I just happened to see it on the bookshelf. It's hard to find because it's so thin. Like, even when I put it on my own bookshelf, sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle because it's so thin. Because, like, you know, the stories are very short and they collected all of them together. But even so, it's a thin collected issue and there's no extras in it. It's just the story itself. But the artwork has been cleaned up a lot because it's not on newsprint. It's on high quality paper. We got this, and we also have some of the newsstand issues. Now, I don't have issue 85, so I don't have the very first story in this arc, but I started out with issue number 86, and I got number 87 as well. So that will cover the very first three stories, or the first three chapters, and that will cover the first half of our review of Blood Hungry. So let's start off with opening this up here and taking a look inside and seeing what we got here of our introduction to the villain Cyber. So this character was introduced and created by Peter David. This is his first appearance, and we get to see kind of like just a very shadowy figure. We don't get to see, you know, his whole body or anything. He's kind of like in a trench coat and a hat. He's in there playing cards and gambling, something that's always very devious for either the anti-hero or even a villain. And, you know, what you're going to see in these books is a great way of doing a short story in sequential art form, because these are only 8 pages for each issue of this, because it was put into an anthology collection of Marvel Comics Presents. So you're going to see how to do panels for a short story. And you'll notice that there's a lot of panels on this page. 14 panels on this one page, but it's done in a very creative way. It's not like your typical just plain old square panels that you would see from classic comic books, or like the sequential art you would see from like a storyboard. It's done in a creative way where, like, your establishing shot up here, you can see we're starting out on a boat, so you can see the boat out there, but there's no background going on, and then we go right inside the boat to see what's going on with the main characters, and we're introduced to them very quickly. And in this introduction, even though our character of Cyber is mysterious, we get to see just how vicious this character is. When the man driving the boat decides to cheat him in cards, you see like a stray card kind of falls out of this guy's sleeve. Cyber gets upset, and we see the close-up of him grinning as he's choking this man to death. So not only is Cyber mysterious, he's tough, he's vicious, he also seems to enjoy inflicting pain on others. So we got all of that just in one page. Now we turn over to our other character, and that is Wolverine. And what Wolverine is up to in this book, as we're introduced to him, he's out in the woods, bucket naked, and he's out there hunting just the same way an old wolf is hunting in the woods as well. And, you know, what Wolverine was training himself to do anyway, you know, he wasn't hunting the wolf per se. He was following the wolf and making sure he could touch him without the wolf noticing he was there. Kind of, you know, showcasing just how stealthy he is. And the wolf itself turns around and sees Wolverine there. He growls at him, well, as he's trying to protect that prey that he just took down. And right here, you get a great look at both the eyes and the face of the wolf, as well as Wolverine himself. And you can see that they sort of share a kinship because this wolf is a lot older. He's been kind of kicked out of the rest of the pack. So Wolverine is kind of seeing a little bit of himself in this wolf here. And here's where we get our first showcase of the adamantium claws. Wolverine helps the wolf because the wolf's old and can't chew like he used to. So Wolverine chops up some of the meat off of this deer. And then the wolf and Wolverine decide to partake in this kill. And actually got Wolverine sitting here eating raw flesh as well as the wolf here. Now, when I first read this, I thought this was very weird because I remember getting this book when I remember reading it and just thinking just how weird it was that Wolverine is out here with, no clothes on and out here eating a dead animal the same way that another animal is. But I guess that's to kind of show his kinship with the world of nature, especially with other predators. And it's right here in this caption where Wolverine starts to get the sense that something is wrong and something bad is coming in the city of Madripoor. So now we introduced our other protagonist, and that is the character of Tyger Tiger, one of Wolverine's main squeezes from the comic books back in the day. She's one of the heads of organized crime there, and, Wolverine has taken a liking to her. He's worked for her as security, and they have a very close relationship. In my opinion, this is the girl for him. He shouldn't be simping over Jean Grey as much, but, that's just the thing they like to do with X-Men comics and have that love triangle. Through the dialogue, we can see that Tyger Tiger notices that Logan is not himself, that he is pensive and possibly worried about something based on the scent that he picked up over the air in Madripoor. And she asked him about it, and he's not, he's actually not too sure exactly what it is, but he realizes it is something very dangerous from his past. So this is way before we got the Wolverine origins or we delved way into his past. So everything was still kind of a mystery and writers could kind of make up things as they went along. But taking a look at the layout designs of these pages here, this is almost like a glamour shot. Like, I like the fact that I got to see different types of panels at a very young age, because before this, I was very much just used to seeing panels where they're all either rectangles or squares, but getting to see like a circle kind of glamour shot, just kind of right there, close up on the woman's face, and it's drawn exceptionally well. So just to see that, it looks really cool. It almost looks like a photograph and not just like a graphic drawing. But even when you go down here, you get just to see the silhouettes, and you get the idea of what's going on. Obviously, they're having some happy time together. She's kind of mounting him in this frame here, but it's very well done with the silhouette and very tastefully done. And it looks very artistic in this way. In these panels, Tyger Tiger remarks that Logan has some ketchup on his sideburns. And we know, obviously, from reading it earlier, that it's not ketchup, it's actually real blood from a dead animal that Logan was eating with the wolf. And this is kind of a parallel to what we're going to see on the next page, where our boy Cyber has finally shown up on the docks of Madripoor. He's meeting his contact into the criminal world, and when they shake hands, the contact notices that Cyber also has blood on his hands, and he remarks, do you have ketchup on your hands? And Cyber says, no, I must learn to be tidier when I play cards. So basically, we're dealing with two people who are very animalistic, who are not afraid to get blood on their hands or on their face, and they're going to have their face off as the chapters progress. So we are going to progress with this story, and the very first issue of this that I actually bought off the newsstand back in 1991 was Marvel Comics Presents Wolverine, number 86, and a very interesting cover. I believe I got this from just like a 7-Eleven or something like that. This was way before I started shopping at comic book stores. But I saw this on the newsstand, and my mom was nice enough to buy it for me, even though it was kind of violent. And it was interesting. I didn't know exactly what was going on. I knew the character of Wolverine, but just the design of this cover I thought was very interesting back then and even now. The fact that, Wolverine's clothes are ripped to shreds. There's actually like an action trail of his costume being ripped by Cyber's claws. And, the way that Cyber is attacking him, you can see that he also has almost like these like porcupine needles coming out of his body, so it's a violent image, but not so gory that it can't be sold on the comic book stand or sold to teenagers. So let's flip it open here, and I'll show you that how much I just love and adore these splash pages that are done by Sam Kieth in these books. And we see Wolverine, just a close-up of his face, kind of put into this very interesting frame here. I couldn't tell what this was at first, but this is just very interesting. And we see that Wolverine is actually climbing up a wall using his claws. And I like the way that it's done with the sound effect, where you're not seeing the wall per se, but it kind of looks like concrete, and you see his claws going into the concrete, and it's basically like the sound effect. And, he's climbing up the wall steadily with those claws. So it's really cool. Very original way to start off a comic book, and adding some artistic merit to a splash page without just, making it always so literal. On the next page, we see the compound of the drug dealer, General Coy, and he's having a meeting with our main villain, Cyber, here. So Cyber is introduced, and apparently he has a new drug, basically, that he wants to sell to the drug dealer, because he believes that this is a good business opportunity, not just for himself, but also the drug dealer, and, General Coy can push it through the community. And over here is where we find out how Wolverine got roped into this story, because obviously the last time we saw him, he was talking with his girlfriend, Tyger Tiger. And once again, I explained to you how she's also the head of a criminal organization. So her and General Coy are rivals as to who will take control of Madripoor. Tyger Tiger has decided to send her boy to see what is going on in this compound. So that's what we're kind of getting, is a little bit of a flashback, and Wolverine thinking to himself about what she asked him to do, and we can see just the overall setting of where he is. So as he sneaks inside, he's trying to be super stealthy. We got to see just how stealthy he was and how quiet he was when he was able to touch the wolf without the wolf noticing him. So Wolverine is going through this hallway. The only one that seems to notice him is a cat. And of course, Wolverine tells the cat to be quiet as he hides behind some very large plants in the hallway as these soldiers walk by. And here's where we finally get the reveal of our main villain, Cyber. As he's talking to General Coy, he also notices that something is off. So he notices Wolverine's presence, and this is where Cyber takes off his trench coat, and we see what type of character we're dealing with here. The fact that he looks almost like a crazy cyborg, or he has this metal covering the outer parts of his arms. So Wolverine is still sneaking through the halls here, and he's trying to keep it quiet. He doesn't want to just pop his claws and start ripping people apart, because he's trying to be stealthy. So he kind of rolls a coin on the floor, and as this guy looks down at the coin, Wolverine knocks him out. And, that way Wolverine can sneak down the hallway without alerting any of the other guards. But just as he's trying to be stealthy, a hand busts through the door and grabs him right by the throat. And then right here in the next panel, the rest of Cyber comes out of the wall, literally, to choke Wolverine and tries to choke him to death. In these 3 panels, we have the reunion of Wolverine and Cyber. Both of them thought the other was dead, but now they're getting ready to have their next confrontation. Once again, look at how these panels are done, how these pages are done. It's not as typical as you would think. You got a great face-off here. But what I learned from Sam Kieth and the way that he designed these pages is you can do a page and have different types of paneling. It doesn't always have to be squares and rectangles. You can take odd shapes like this and put your artwork into a different type of mosaic and give off a artsy appeal to the page. It's a violent face-off between Wolverine and Cyber. We get a very nice page in the way that it's designed. And you notice here, Wolverine, he tries his best to slice at Cyber, but the metal on his arms is protecting him, and Cyber is able to slash into Wolverine's stomach with his very small but extremely lethal claws that come out of his fingertips. So once again, this is an older comic. This is before Wolverine had a super high-powered healing factor, the same way I explained to you guys about Sabretooth in that Spider-Man comic. Wolverine did have a healing factor, but it was not into overdrive like it is now. So this actually does some damage to him having his stomach sliced open. So we notice that Wolverine's actually in trouble, and this was probably one of the first times as a comic book reader that I saw that the main character was bleeding profusely, and the coloring of the blood was actually red. So Wolverine's not taking any chances trying to fight Cyber at this point. He decides to hightail it out of there, and we see him run for it, and he runs out the window, jumping through, busting through the glass. Very simple, but also very effective action sequence for this fight scene between Cyber and Wolverine. And it's going to continue in issue 87. So after I got issue 86, I was very much anticipating the continuation of this story in Marvel Comics Presents 87. And I picked up this issue also at 7-Eleven. And it showcases Wolverine just holding on to a ledge, and you see just nothing but blank space around him. So that gives you the feeling of the main character is in danger when all you can see is, him kind of just holding on there to this edge, and, the edge is already slanted. He's holding on for dear life. His clothes are all tattered and ripped up, and, he's kind of just, very small on the page. He's not taking up much of the cover, and it's something that definitely makes you want to figure out what is going on, especially if you read the last issue. You know that he was kind of running for his life after facing off against Cyber, and now you're intrigued as to what is going to happen to the hero as he's trying to survive and trying to escape. So once again, we start off with a very memorable and also well done splash page by Sam Kieth of Wolverine climbing up the side of the mountain. So we got to see how it looked on the cover. Here's the cover of issue 87. And this is the way that he decided to depict this same concept. So the same concept we see on the cover of him climbing up the edge of this mountain. This is how he decided to depict it on the splash page. And, kind of got to see a sequence of images of Wolverine running, jumping up, grabbing the edge, and climbing over. And you can see just in the strain of his muscles and, how tattered his clothes are and everything, that is really a struggle for him. And we see by Peter David's dialogue that Wolverine is also starting to hallucinate. And he's hallucinating because Cyber, not only do his claws, are they just sharp and deadly, but they have been tipped with an actual drug and hallucinogen, and it's getting into Wolverine's bloodstream now. On this next page, we get probably one of my favorite pinup type pages from Sam Kieth, and it is this drawing here of Tyger Tiger. Now, if you follow Sam Kieth, you know that he does a lot of these types of pages in his independent books like the Max. But here, this was my introduction to him and his art style and the way that he draws women. First of all, I enjoy the fact that he actually put this on the whole page. So it's not just a small panel somewhere. He made sure to showcase her on the whole page. I love the fact that he gave her some curves. I appreciate that. He's known for drawing women with curves and not always having the women be super skinny. His women have a little bit of weight to them. Sometimes they also have a little bit of a belly, which people appreciate. So This was probably my introduction to him as an artist as far as the way that he draws women. And he was very much an inspiration for me. And we see here that the villain Cyber is showing back up again, but this time he's showing up to interrogate Tyger Tiger. And we get him kind of crashing through here, busting through the door, and basically coming to terms with her and asking her some questions. And she decides to stay calm and just offer him some tea. So while Cyber and Tyger Tiger are having some tea, our boy Logan, aka Wolverine, is just going through it. And he's out in the middle of the woods. He's trying to hold his guts in because his stomach has been slashed open, so his intestines are actually hanging out. And he's trying his best to kind of hold on and let his healing factor do some work. And while he's doing that, some of the animals that we have seen so far, both the cat as well as the wolf, have decided to show up to show their support for their fellow creature of the night, Wolverine. Now, this is where we get into Wolverine's hallucination. This is where Sam Kieth really starts to stretch his legs and start showcasing more of his style as far as the type of art that I believe he really loves to do, where it's kind of weird and kind of quirky. And this is where we see Wolverine having this weird hallucination about hanging out at the local cafe. All the babes seem to love him. He's kind of like the Fonz back then. So all the girls love him, but there's a certain girl that he wants the most, and she's not paying him any attention because she has decided that she wants to date a guy who is more mature and a lot cooler than Logan. So once again, you get to see the different types of paneling, and I believe to make this more obvious that it is a hallucination or a daydream, we don't get the sharp edges. It's not like a sharp rectangle. We get the rounded edges on this. And once again, we get another circular panel here on a close-up on a woman's face like we did in one of the other issues. But very well drawn. And also, you notice that Wolverine himself looks a lot different. He's not as muscular as he is in the real world, and his hair is a lot longer. He's got, the cigarette hanging out of his mouth, his guts kind of hanging out there. So once again, we're seeing a little bit more of the quirky style come out for what Sam Kieth is drawing here. So Logan tries to show off to the girl, basically showing off his claws and saying like, no one has this. You see how cool my claws are? I just got them from the body shop. After seeing this, Logan feels he's a shoo-in for getting this girl to go with him on a date. But she has said that she's not going out with him. She's going out with a teacher. And you see right here how Logan is completely flabbergasted by the idea that this teenage girl is going to be going out with a teacher. And she mentions that the teacher is Mr. Cyber. And of course, Wolverine is pissed off. He slices up her hamburger and basically says that he's going to deal with Mr. Cyber because Mr. Cyber has moved in on his girl. So we're going to see in the next issue how this hallucination pans out. But just to make sure we know that we're in a hallucination, we see our boy Wolverine curled up on the ground, doing his best to kind of keep his mind, but also keep his guts intact. So right here on the very last page, we see that Cyber is here to not only make an offer to General Coy about his new drug. We got a guy who is very industrious, and he's going to set these two criminal organizations against each other and have them bid for his new drug. And we're going to find out how this story materializes as we go forward in the next issue. So that is the end of part 1 of Blood Hungry. We got to see a great introduction of our hero, Logan, as well as his girlfriend, Tyger Tiger. And we got to see an amazing intro of the new villain, Cyber, and just see how dangerous and how vicious he is now that he has severely injured our hero, Logan, aka Wolverine. So I thought this would be a great spot to stop and kind of leave you off on a cliffhanger here that Logan is hurt and trying to heal from his first attack, and also getting into the psychological trauma that Cyber left on our hero. So make sure that you're here next time when I review part 2 of Blood Hungry. And make sure you stay tuned to this channel because there will also be some Comics Crazy extras that I will be putting on YouTube as well as the Patreon. One in particular is a review of a art book preview of Marvels done by Alex Ross. Alex Ross is one of my favorite artists growing up and even now, and I've been a big fan of his for years. So we're going to be looking at some of his early artwork and some of his early concepts for the graphic novel that made him famous, Marvels. So we're going to be looking at that here on Comics Crazy. So make sure if you are not subscribed to go ahead and subscribe to this channel. Make sure you go ahead and like this video and make sure you go ahead and share it out there with anyone else who are fans of these classic comics. Anyway, this is Chris Crazy House signing out. Peace.